Hi. I think we'll today focus on the menorah. We're in Parshas Teruma. Teruma is about the kelim that were built for the Mishkan and the Mishkan itself. And one of the kelim, as we all know, was the menorah. It's a prominent keli, something that figures prominently in modern Jewish symbolism. And speaking of symbolism, is a major focus of Rabbi Hirsch's treatment of the whole Mishkan. He speaks a lot about the Mishkan B'Kelev, particularly, maybe not more than any other keli, all the other kelim, but nonetheless a great deal of attention he does give to the menorah. We're going to try to scratch the surface. We're not going to get to the whole thing. I've never, unfortunately, even myself, been able to really assimilate the whole body of what Rabbi Hirsch says about the menorah, but we'll give it a shot. First of all, you know the menorah was placed in the Heichel, in the Kodesh. That is, the Kodesh HaKodashim with the Aron was in the westernmost part of the Mishkan. It was separated from the rest of the Mishkan by a curtain, a pareichus. On the other side of this curtain were the Shulchan, containing the Lechem Apanim, and on the other side, the south side of the Heichel, facing opposite the Shulchan, was the menorah. And in between them, a little bit to the east, I believe, was the Mizbach HaKatoros. The menorah obviously was there for light. A lamp is there for the light that it carries. And light, Rabbi Hirsch says, clearly has symbolic properties that point to intelligence. So you might easily say, and you would not be incorrect, that the Shulchan represents the material well-being of the Jewish people, as influenced by the Torah, represented by the Aron behind the pareichus, and the menorah would represent the intellectual lives of the Jewish people, as influenced by the Torah. You would not be incorrect. In fact, there are a great many psukim through Tanakh that associate or light with wisdom. For instance, Ner l'ragli devarecha v'oyer l'nesivasi. A light to my feet, for my feet, you have expressed to me, I think, v'oyer l'nesivasi, and a candle, I should say, to my feet, and light as my path, to light my way. So the knowledge, the understanding to go through life and understand which path to take, that's Hashem's or. Or in Pasuk in Yeshaya, Beis Yaakov l'chu v'nelcha, ba'or Hashem. Beis Yaakov, the nations of the world, will say to Beis Yaakov in the future, l'chu v'nelcha, let's go, and all travel together. You people should go and travel, ba'or Hashem, by the light of Hashem. It's the wisdom of Hashem, Hashem's Torah, which should guide us. There are many other psukim of that type. However, Rabbi Hirsch says, one must be careful never to miss out even part of the obvious symbolism of a particular mitzvah. There are, in fact, as we've said, many psukim suggesting a connection between or and wisdom, but there are many more psukim suggesting a strong connection between or, light, and success, progress in life. The light sometimes is used as a description of one's choices that he makes to move on, to grow in life. An example, the pasuk in Eov, and Rabbi Hirsch in this little subsection of his treatment of menorah is very wordy. He brings many psukim as though he's worried that we may not really trust him, that he's saying something too remarkable to be taken at face value. He brings many psukim, and they're very convincing. So we'll just take a few examples. The pasuk in Eov, B'hilei neroi alei roshi, when the Hashem's candle shines above my head, la'oiroi eilech choshech, and by his light I will go in darkness. This, although it's similar to Or l'nesivasi, it's true, nonetheless, in the context of the psukim in Eov, I believe, is more an indication of the success Eov anticipates he's going to experience as a result of this Or. Not necessarily the wise choices he could make, but success and the right movement in the right direction. In a pasuk in Esther, with which you're familiar, and now that we're almost into the month of Adar, wrong Adar, but Adar all the same, it's relevant. La Yehudim haya sa'ora v'simcha v'sasain v'kar. The Jews experienced, as a result of the Geula through Mordechai Esther, they experienced oira, light, simcha, joy, sasain, more joy, vikar, and a certain glory, a certain preciousness or value that it was increased. Again, not really wisdom per se, but a success and a happiness and an upward movement. Rabbi Hirsch says this dual meaning of or should expand the way we think of the menorah and what the menorah carries. But he says there's another Hebrew word that is evoked by this dual understanding of or. And that word, he says, is ruach. Ruach, let's translate as spirit. That's the way he translates it. I assume that's more or less what the German would have been. So as an example, V'yemer paray alavadav, hanimsech hazeh ish asher ruach elokim boy. Have we ever found a man like this Yosef, in whom is the ruach elokim? Now it wasn't just wisdom, of course. Paro was in the spoil; he was astounded by Yosef's wisdom, but there was more. There was Paro anticipated that Yosef would be very, very successful and capable of making the right decisions that would lead the country the way it should go. For example, concerning Bezalel, who was chosen to be actually one of those, the leader of those building the Mishkan itself. V'yemalei oisoi ruach elokim b'chochma b'svuna u'v'das v'chol malacha. That he was filled with ruach elokim, which obviously represents much more than chochma, because it was in chochma, but also in svuna and das and kol malacha. All those skills, all those abilities to choose and to progress, all are encompassed somehow in the expression ruach elokim. Another example, and again, just a few of the many Rabbi Hirsch actually brings, is v'nasati in Yecheskel, v'nasati lohem leiv echad v'ruach chadasha. I will give to them a one heart and a ruach chadash, a new chadash atem b'kirvechem. I'll give in their midst. V'asi roisi leiv ha'evan. I will remove the heart of stone b'besarim from their flesh. V'nasati lohem leiv basar. And I'll give them a heart of flesh. This new spirit, this leiv, this ruach chadasha, this new spirit, which is to guide and bring the Jews to a much greater place. Finally, from these examples, pasuk in Yeshaya, v'yotza choiter migeza Yishai, a branch, a shoot, will come from the trunk of Yishai, the netzer mishrashav Yifreh, and a plant, a blossom perhaps from its root will come forth. V'nocha alav ruach Hashem, it's referring to Mashiach, by the way. V'nocha alav ruach Hashem, and the spirit, the ruach of Hashem, will rest on him. Ruach chachma, which is a ruach chachma uvina, ruach eitza ugevura. It's a spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of planning, ugevura, and power. Ruach das, a spirit of knowledge, v'yiras Hashem, and yiras Hashem. All those together, all again are encompassed by the word ruach. So Hirsch concludes that this or, the light which was carried by the menorah, is more than just wisdom. It's actually a spirit that includes wisdom, but goes much further to practical choices and practical growth. Encompassed, of course, by the word ruach. Now you may say, as Rabbi Hirsch is afraid we might, that perhaps we're going a little too far. We're carrying a symbolism thing and this etymology and stretching the symbolism, the meaning of the menorah a little bit too far. Well, it turns out that there are psukim in the Navi Zechariah, which happens to be a haftarah in Parshas Behaloischa, which deals with the menorah also. The psukim go as follows: V'yashav hamalach hadoiver bi. Zechariah Hanavi says, this malach, this angel who was speaking to me, returned, and he said again, the yireni keish asher yeor mishnasai, and he woke me up like a man who was woken from a slumber. Vayemer elai ma'ata raya, and he said to me, this malach, what do you see? Va'omer, and I said, Ra'isi v'hine menorahs zahav kula v'gula al roshai. I see a something like a menorah of gold, and it is covered. Its head is covered with this gula, which uncovered, I suppose. V'shiva neiroseha aleh, and it has these 7 candles on this menorah. V'shiva mutzakois laneiros asher al rosha. Each is drawing from oil, I suppose, or allowing oil to be drawn to these neiros, these cups that are on it. Ushnayim zeisim aleha, and there are 2 olives on it. Echad miyamin hagula ve'echad al smoila, one to the right and one to the left. Va'an ve'omer el malach hadoiver bi, and I answered, I said to the malach who was speaking to me, Lemor ma eila adoni, what are these, my lord? V'yan malach hadoiver bi, and the malach answered, he said, Vayemer elai halo yadata, don't you know? As though Zechariah was expected to know the answer. He was expected to know what the meaning of this was. Mahema Ela, Ve'omer lo yadoni, he said, I don't know. Vayan Vayemer elai Lemar zeh devar Hashem el Zerubbabel. This is the word of Hashem to Zerubbabel, who was the political leader of the Jews at the time in Eretz Yisrael, in Zechariah's time. But Lemar, this is to say, lo b'chayav lo b'koyach, not with force and not with military strength, ki'im beruchi, Amar Hashem Tzavakos, only with my ruach. So this menorah, which was shown to Zechariah as a symbol of the way that the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael should proceed from that point on, is described as ruchi, my spirit. There's no question that we are meant to think of the menorah of the Mishkan when we see this. We understand and we appreciate this image that the Malach was showing Zechariah, and it was characterized as ruach. Okay, now that's the or, the light, the fire of the menorah. Very briefly, we'll try to associate that with the menorah itself. Very briefly, we're really not doing it justice. But the menorah, of course, was one stem in the middle, one upright vertical stem, from which were drawn on each side 3 branches, very much like a tree. There were 3 branches with their flowery designs, 3 on each, so that's a total of 6 branches coming out. The cups at the top of each of these 6 branches were turned or were twisted a little bit back towards the center, so that the light, the candle that would be lit on each of the 6 branches would point to the candle in the center, as though to say that what these branches symbolized came from the root, came from the central stem. But even when they turned, they moved off in different directions, nonetheless their ultimate goal was focused back towards the center. Think, therefore, of the menorah as a whole, which, by the way, was the only keli in the Mishkan made of pure gold. The others, the shulchan, for instance, was gold overlaid on top of wood. Even the Aron HaKodesh was gold overlaid and underlaid, but with wood in the middle. The menorah was the only one that was pure gold. Gold is the metal, Rabbi Hirsch says, which most makes us think of firmness and endurance, things that don't change. So the ruach, which we are to be taught in light of the Torah, the Torah represented by the Aron HaKodesh behind the Pareiches, it guides the way our intellectual, but also our choice lives, our moral lives, are brought about, are put into action. This is guided by the moral clarity that is eternal, is unchanging. We can grow intellectually, and we can grow physically, and we can grow in wealth, but the truth is the truth. The truth that we might have an inkling of as a young child is the same truth that we may more maturely understand in our older years, but it's truth, and it doesn't change. So this menorah, this golden menorah, which is 6 branches projecting from the central stem without any question would be the Torah of Hashem and Hashem himself. The 6 branches represent in Hirschian terms, the overall, all of the wisdom of the world, whether science or philosophy, all the worldly wisdoms, each has a place, but all should come from Reishis Chochma Yiras Hashem, should come from Yiras Hashem, comes from its stem, and all should be focused on enhancing our loyalty and our closeness to Hashem and to His Torah right at it as its goal, as its ultimate goal. That is scratching the surface, a little tiny taste of what Rabbi Hirsch has to say about the menorah, and I hope to see you next week.